I thought you had 1940.
Yeah.
You said you were also not in
Yeah, in 39 I was freshman.
So you said you graduated high school in 37 and you went to Florida.
Yeah.
Did that end up being for a whole year? Or?
Well, about a year, yeah.
So when you started at State College, that was 38?
38 and 39, that was my freshman year, yeah.
And so you started in the fall?
Fall of 38.
You were there for
almost 4 years, yeah.
So you just lacked enough credit.
Yeah.
That maintenance course.
That's right, yeah. It gave me, I had just about all I needed to graduate, and they gave me credit for the course up there and mailed me my diploma.
What did you study in college?
Chemistry, science. And after I got out, I went back to my chemistry. I got a job, first of all, with the Sealy Corporation down in Atlanta, which is making industrial chemicals like floor polishes, insecticides, and disinfectants. And then I got with the Mead Corporation, Mead Packaging, that made cartons. I don't know, did you pick up Pepsi-Cola and Coca-Cola and beer cartons? And I got in with formulating at the coder and formulated coatings. That's where I used my chemistry.
How do you spell Sealy?
SELIG. They're still down there. I was with them about 4 years, but I spent over 30 years with Mead.
You got out in 46?
Yeah.
And you went right to work?
Well, not right away. My folks had moved back to Florida, and I went down there, and I got a temporary job. If I do, I don't know. It wasn't much of anything, and I had dengue fever while I was in the jungle, which is similar to malaria, and I was still taking Ativan when I got out. I stopped taking Ativan. And I couldn't stand the climate down there in Lauderdale. I started getting chills and fever, so I headed north, and I got as far as Atlanta and got better, so I stopped in Atlanta. And while there, I went 1 year to med school. I got accepted at Emory University and went 1 year to med school, but then my mother had to come up and have an operation, so I decided that I had to pay for that, so I went to work, and I never did go back to med school.
So why did you want to be a doctor?
Well, I don't know. I just had enough pre-med to do it, and the GI Bill let me get in, so I took an interview, and they accepted me. But really, I never regretted not going back, because I enjoyed my work in chemistry. And I had good relations with the Mead Corporation.
How long did you work there?
Over 30 years.
And you retired?
I retired in 1982.
Did you ever fly again after service? No? Nope.
Just commercially. I did a lot of commercial flying when I was in quality control. I had to...
Piloting or just?
As
a passenger. As a passenger.
As passenger. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
What was it like the first time you flew? Do you remember?
Well, the first time I flew as a passenger, you mean as a pilot?
Well, you mentioned earlier it was the first time you'd left the ground.
Well, I don't know. I was in the back of a C-47, and it was a thrill. But I tell you, the real thrill was when I got to primary down at Carlson Field at Arcadia, Florida, and got to climb in that PT-17 and take off, and then the instructor went up and started doing loops and rolls and everything else, and that was something. That PT-17 is a good acrobatic plane.
So you never got sick and didn't feel fine?
No, I flew more upside down than I did right side up during the day. It was fun.
What was your favorite airplane?
P-38. No doubt.
One behind you?
No doubt about it. That was the best plane in the war. It was the top of top of the line.
In regards to school, do you have a specific time or a favorite memory about STC?
Well, I enjoyed all of it. I enjoyed my playing in the dance band. We played all over Middle Tennessee and some almost to West Tennessee. We played cotillion clubs and sub-debs. We even played one dance in Murfreesboro, the club that they called the Elite Club. They called them 𝐜𝐿𝐴𝐷. It was a black group that had a dance, and we played for them.
Did you get paid at all?
Huh?
Did you get paid for those?
Yeah, but not much. Not much. But back then, $1 went along. In fact, is one of the jobs that I had, besides working for the school, there was a tea room right off the campus. 𝐸𝐴𝐷𝐸𝐿 had a tea room there, and I worked there as a waiter. And I worked 3 meals a day, and all we got out of it was our eats. But when you get food at college, that's a big item that you don't have to pay for. And you can tell, back then, when he was running that tea room, you get a meat, 2 vegetables, a drink, and a dessert for 25 cents. And he made money on it. In fact, he sent two of his kids through college with that tea room. Of course, he always told us we were eating all of his profits up because he didn't care what we ate. But we got plenty to eat. But that took care of food, and I got my books out of the bookstore, second-hand books, but they're just as good as new.
Where was the bookstore?
It was in the administration building downstairs. The old lad building's still there, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You climb the steps and you go down, and the post office was down there. Y'all got your mail down. And the bookstore was just off to the right of the post office.
Did you pay for your books?
No,
yourself?
no. I got them from working with the school. I got access to them. I had to turn them back in, but I didn't have to pay for them. So I got my education all paid for. I got my room in Jones Hall, and I got tuition and secondhand books, and I worked for my meals at the box, 𝐸𝐴𝐷𝐸𝐿, at the tea room, and played in the dance orchestra for spending money.
So, what did you do as a lab assistant with Ollie Green?
They have to come and check out their chemicals in there, and I checked them out. I graded notebooks, lab books, and just kept the storeroom in general.
Is that in the science building, I take?
Yep, downstairs.
How would you describe Ollie Green?
Well, I loved her. She was a humane person. She thought of all of her students. I mean, she'd do anything to help them. And she helped me a lot. She got me the job and tutored me, and I guess you'd call babied me and pushed me and everything. But she was a fine instructor.
How did you get to know her?
By taking a class under her. I was taking first year chemistry, and she got to liking me and wanted to know if I wanted a job, and I took it.
Was that typical of the faculty there?
Yes. One of the physics professor was Dr. Mevin, and he played in the orchestra. He played cello. He was bald-headed almost, and I can just see him now sawing away on that cello, but he was a smart man. He was ambidextrous, and he'd write the exams on the board, and he'd be writing along with his right hand. Next thing you know, he'd be writing with his left hand. But I understand that somehow or other he'd been experimenting with explosives of some kind, and the Navy sent for him, and he left school, I think, and went to Navy somehow with some of the experiments that he had done. I never did find out exactly what it was. It was kind of hush-hush. But Dr. Maven, I took physics under him.
I asked about Philip Mencken this morning.
Oh, Phil Mencken. I took literature under him. He was the typical absent-minded professor. I don't think he had but one suit, and it was blue serge, and it had chalk dust all over it. But he knew his literature, I'm telling you. You couldn't name Shakespeare that he couldn't start quoting you chapter and act and line and everything, no matter what it was. And he kept your attention. But like I say, he was kind of an absent-minded professor type, but he was a real intellectual. I liked him.
Did you ever get invited to faculty homes?
Yeah, I went to Phil Menken's some. He had some of us in there for discussion, just bull session, I guess you'd call it. And went into his room, and he had nothing but books lined from floor to ceiling, all over. And we'd sit there and have discussion about literature and just things in general. So I got to go to his house quite a bit.
What did you think when he was let go?
Well, I really didn't know. I hadn't been in contact. I found about that later on. He had some kind of a controversy there, didn't he? I don't know what it was.
President Smith didn't like him for some
QM didn't like him at all, no, and I know that. I knew that at the time, and I don't know what it was between him and QM.
Well, from your description, that he sounded pretty likable.
Oh, he was. I liked him.
Do you think that was true of most students?
I think so. I don't know of any student that didn't like him, especially the ones that had classes under him.
Your wife described him as squirrely.
Well, he was. You'd call him squirrely. I'd say he was, well, I called him the absent-minded professor type, and I guess that's squirrely. But he didn't dress, he dressed kind of sloppy, and like I say, I don't think he owned but one suit. And he'd come in, he'd have chalk dust all over it, but it didn't seem to faze him.
Were there other eccentric or absent-minded professors like that?
No, not that I know of.
Do you ever remember him teaching something that you'd call controversial at the time?
No.
I think one of the charges was that his religion,
Well, I don't think we ever got on religion.
something about when you're certain students reading about Greek literature or something and asking about hell, and his answer upset some people.
I don't remember that at all, no. I don't think we ever got talking about religion with him. I'm not surprised, though.
On the subject, do you think FTC was pretty an open-minded place
I
in the
think
late
so.
30s?
I think so, yeah. I found it so.
Was religion important in general? Students going to church?
Well,
Faculty going to church?
well, we always had scripture reading in the auditorium when we had chapel and stuff, but there wasn't any great stress on it, I don't think.
So what did you think of QM Smith?
Well, I didn't have too much relationship with him. He was weird. Let's say that.
What was weird about him?
Well, I don't know. He married his secretary in the first place, didn't he? I mean, of course, that's not too uncommon these days, but it was back then.
So people knew about that?
Oh, yes. See, he'd been over at, or she'd been over at TPI, and, but I don't know, I went through the teas at his house, you know, they had tea every once in a while there, formal tea, but I didn't have too much close relationship with him. I was too busy doing other things.
Did you know President Lyon?
Oh, yes, he was fine.
Why did he go away?
I don't know. He was a fine person. Dean Beasley, now, he was He was a prince, I'll tell you.
How could he keep up with all of you students?
I don't know. But he'd do anything in the world to keep you going.
Was there anything in particular he did to help you along?
Well, he got me introduced into the bookstore down there to get my books. And I have a sneaking suspicion he's behind my getting my diploma. Because he was still there when I went through this course. And I'm pretty sure that Dean Beasley saw to it that I got my BS degree. I don't know for sure, but I'd suspect that.
Without having to come back and do
That's right,
another
yeah.
year.
Well, see, I was still in service. That in 45, but I didn't get out till 46.
You mentioned staying in the Jones Hall dormitories.
Yeah.
How were the dorms back then?
Well, they weren't co-educational, I'll tell you that.
Were there strict rules on the boys and the?
Well, they weren't too strict. You couldn't shoot firecrackers all the time, but they did. Once a year, we had an open house where we cleaned up our dorms, our rooms, at least we hid things so that the girls could come in. Now, there's a picture in one of these annuals of open house where my picture's in it where the girls are visiting.
Would it be towards the back?
Do you want to look for it?
No, I don't know. Let me have it. Let's see if I don't know which year it is. 39.
Was the little trailer still hooked up in the back when you were there, in Jones Hall, the one that the guys had brought in and were living in?
No, I didn't have any trailers in. See, the thing about Jones Hall, you started out on the third floor. Then as you got further along, when you got to be a senior, you got to be the first floor.
Were there faculty living there? Or
No, they had one, I guess you'd call him supervisor or head of it. I think Tarpley was the one. Let's see if I can.
How many students were per room?
I don't think we were but two.
Could you choose your own roommate?
Most of the time, yeah. Good 40.
2140?
While you're looking, let me read this. I think this is you writing in Thelma's.
Oh, yeah.
Dear Thelma, inevitably we remember certain people for their outstanding traits. I shall remember you for your perpetual good nature and smile. Let me always remain your friend, Lewis. And you have an arrow down to your picture in the
Yeah.
legislative department.
Yeah.
That's good. You're in the 41.
Yeah.
That's another one we don't have, right?
That's me right there.
So
That's my roommate. Now, he died just about 2 years ago.
that's the photograph. They have a number 10 on it, on the lower left corner there. But
Let's see what it says on 10.
didn't that say 10?
No, it says 10 here, but the boys were at home from 3 to 5.
So you're the one in the foreground there?
I know, that's my roommate. This is me.
In the light colored jacket.
Yeah.
So the girls would come around and watch you shave during open house?
Well, they could see our room, what we hadn't hidden. We didn't clean up. We just
The bed?
stuck it under the bed and in the closet and everywhere just to get it out of sight.
I still do that.
Okay.
Here's a picture in the 39 of looks like two two black men and a white or a black woman. Maybe they're cafeteria workers. They have white uniforms.
Yeah, they're the ones that cooked over at GI Box.
Oh,
They worked in the kitchen at Box Restaurant Tea Room. They weren't at school.
so how much contact did you have with blacks back then?
None. There weren't any blacks at all in school.
Were there workers around?
Well, like those worked there, but they did. I don't know that there were any black workers at school.
What about when you went in the military?
No,
It was segregated, but did you
Yeah.
have any contact with
none at all. There weren't anywhere around. The only blacks that we saw in New Guinea were the Fuzzy Wuzzies and more natives, and very few of them, because they scattered into the jungle.
I was going to look at the faculty page more.
New Guinea belonged to Britain at that time, right?
It belonged to Australia.
Oh, Australia.
The southern part, the northern part was Dutch.
Oh.
It was divided. Papua in the south was Australian New Guinea, and up to the northwest was Dutch New Guinea.
Okay. I guess I'm thinking of the 19th century.
Because, like I say, when we got up in Dutch New Guinea, we were paid in guilders, Dutch guilders.
Were you an athlete or a fan of athletics in college?
No, I didn't have time for that. I played football in high school and got my shoulder thrown out of place, and so it still bothers me.
If you would mind just looking down that page and if any thoughts come to mind about people you had.
Yeah, there's Chief Valdez.
They call him Chief.
Yeah, he was a chief warrant officer in the Army.
So that uniform he wore, was that just something he created, that hat and all? Was that like a band?
Well, that must have been part of his uniform. There's Dr. Mevin.
Did you have a good band and orchestra?
Oh yes, fine. They were a bunch of good musicians, and they scattered out. They taught all over Tennessee. After they graduated, they were band directors in high schools all over.
Did you take music classes?
Well, I didn't, but some of them did. They took classes, but I taught myself to play the clarinet.
How can you do that?
I don't know.
Was that as a kid or in high school? Or?
No, when I was in high school, I got my parents to order me an old metal clarinet from Sears Roebuck, and got a little instruction book with it, and I started tinkering with it, and I can remember getting, and Sparta, there was a dentist there who was a musician, and he helped me a little bit as I was learning to play, and I remember listening at 12 o'clock on WSM, they had what they call the National Farm and Home Hour, and they always opened up with Stars and Stripes Forever. And every time they'd play it, I'd get my music out, and I played Stars and Stripes Forever with them. But when I got to Murfreesboro, I got to check out a wooden clarinet at the music department, and I started playing with them then. But I never did take any classes.
So where was the music? Where did you practice? Which building?
It was in the ad building downstairs.
You
It
never-
seemed to me like downstairs to the left.
You didn't have classes with May Saunders?
No. E. May Saunders. I think all the other boys in the Hughley bunch, they all had it. Tommy Meadows.
How did the Hughley band get formed? Do you know? Tom
Well,
Hughley and the
Southerners.
Southerners.
Yeah. Well, there were two bands. There were the Hughley and the Southerners and Louis Brinkley. And I got with Louis Brinkley. Now, of course, the Hughleys, they were good musicians. They were one of them. Let's see who else I can get.
So in your band, these people on the right, there's a woman and two men.
They were vocalists,
Singers?
and all three of them were still in high school.
Oh. Where was this picture taken?
That was taken up over a restaurant where we practiced sometimes, and we played some dances up there. It was just the top floor up there. It was empty, and they had that backdrop painted.
So the fellow on the left is Louis Franklin.
Yeah, that's standing up. Mm-hmm.
And this was about what year, do you think?
That was actually either 39 or 40, somewhere along in there.
And we talked about Aubrey Moore. Which one are you? So you're playing sax?
Yeah, sax and clarinet, right there.
So you're right in the middle.
Yeah. This is Tony Tamburo. I don't remember his name, and that's Aubrey.
So Aubrey, you don't remember you, and then Tony
Tamburo. His dad owned a Greek restaurant.
Then you had two trombones.
Yeah. We had one of the only left-handed trombonists that I know of, Bucky Doster. He was left-handed.
Left, yeah. Who played the bass?
I can't think of his name right now.
And you had a drummer.
Yeah. And 3 trumpets.
These guys in the back.
Yeah.
You'd play big bands. Swing.
Oh yeah, yeah. We got all the arrangements of Glenn Miller and Tommy Dorsey and Benny Goodman and Glenn Gray. All the big bands. We'd get the arrangements and practice them and play them. And like I say, we danced with partners then, not at them. That's the reason they had no breaks.
Let's talk about those dance programs.
Yeah.
I think those are all from 1940s. But
Yeah.
How often were there dances? At
Once a quarter. They had a quarterly dance.
And this is your set list?
That's my wife's.
Oh, okay.
See, you
But
got
you're
you
on
got
there.
the first and the last no break with your date. And a no break was when you got to dance the whole dance. Otherwise, somebody could tap you on the shoulder, and break.
Oh, so these are listener songs. And
These
people
are the
you dance
songs,
with
yeah.
For those songs.
Shake Down the Stars, Too Romantic, Charming Little Faker, Darn That Dream, Say It, Imagination.
So this is her dance card.
This is the dance card.
And when would they fill those out?
Before the dance, you'd see somebody and say, "May I have no break?" And she'd look at that and say, "Yeah, you can have number 2 or number 4."
Well, here you are in the march.
Yeah.
The march dance.
I think you're on all of them. You were known as Mickey?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Why is that?
Well, there was a movie that came out. I forgot the name of it, but John Garfield was in it. And in the movie, he was called Mickey, and they said I looked like John Garfield, so they started calling me Mickey. And it stuck for a while till I got in the service.
So, you were dating Thelma at this time?
Oh, yes.
When did you meet at school?
When I was freshman. Well, we had dances in the cafeteria on Fridays. We could go in and play the jukebox at Nickelodeon. And when I was a freshman, she was sitting at the table with her roommate. And I went over and sat down and got talking with her. And we danced. And I was surprised when I asked her if she had a date for the quarterly dance, and she said no. And I said, "Well, you go with me," and she did. And that's how we met. And we kept dating all the time she was there. And then after she came to Nashville, up until the time I left Dothan and disappeared for 51 years.
And you were married to someone else?
Yeah, I was married. I got married when I was 44 years old. I married someone that worked at Meade when I was there. And she had a long bout with cancer. And she finally died. She had multiple myeloma. And after she died, I was down there by myself, and I decided to call the Alumni Association and find out where Thelma was. And I gave her a call, and she answered, and we decided she had a sister. I was in Atlanta at the time, and she lived here in Franklin. And she had up on the top of the mountain in Chattanooga. So we decided to meet there. She came down from Nashville, and I came up from Atlanta, and we met, and 1 year later we were married. We met in 1993 and married in 94, and we've been married 14 years now.
So you hadn't seen her or heard from her since 1942?
No,
Is that right?
that's right.
And you just
October the 9th, 1942.
when she pinned your wings on.
That's right.
So 51 years later, you
Got back
found
together.
her.
Yeah. We've been making up for lost time.
Isn't that a nice story?
And it doesn't say it's a movie. You can make a movie in that.
She was telling us about some of the other guys on the dance card.
Yeah.
And as I recall, I think one of them was killed in the service. Do any of those names
Let's see
ring
which
a
one.
bell? That's the St. Patrick's Day. Dance.
Yeah. When I danced Hodge, he was one of my best friends, and in fact, as I lived with him in Atlanta some after I came back from overseas. He died several years ago, though. Now, Haney Baston, he was a fighter pilot over in Europe, and he lived out from Murfreesboro somewhere, and his nephew is my internist. Because I don't know, when I went with him, he's talking about Uncle Haney, and I knew him, so we made connections there. I don't know, let me strike a familiar name. I know the name.
You tell us about the one who asked her out and was kind of indignant about her ignoring him.
Oh,
The big fellow.
Yeah.
He was on one of those.
yeah, I don't know who that was. No, I recognize a lot of faces on here.
So I think there's first one is Sims.
I don't know him. Golightly, I remember him. George Davis, Neil Frazier, remember him. Dr. Lewis, Dr. Mabin, Marion Edney, he was biology. He got kind of famous for marrying one of his students.
Famous or infamous?
Famous or infamous, you might call it.
That happens on occasion.
Yeah. Phil Mankin. Let's see where he is here.
He's got those glasses on. I think.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Dr. Cheek.
Did you take education courses?
No.
You never had any desire to be
No,
a
I
teacher?
took all science. B.B. Gracie. Gabriel Valdez.
He wasn't there too long, was he?
No, he wasn't.
Do you know whatever happened to him?
I don't know. Wink Midget. Recognize a lot of them.
So you could go to STC and not be a teacher, not have to take.
Oh, yeah, sure. Although most of them became teachers. See, it started out as State Teachers College, and then they changed the name and took the teachers out of it. And it was just Middle Tennessee State College when I was there, or State Teachers College. It was Middle Tennessee State. They took the teacher out.
You mentioned earlier the assemblies or chapels.
Yeah.
What were those for? How often?
Well, they seemed to me like we had them about every day. They'd meet in the auditorium and have a program. Sometimes they'd have music, but they always had Bible readings and a prayer.
Were those required?
Well, I don't think you'd say required, but everybody went to them. It's like your boss says, please come. That means you got to.
And at the dances, were there any faculty around?
Oh, yes, all faculty. They're well supervised.
Would they dance also, or just sit around?
I mostly sit around. I don't think I saw any of them dance.
I can't imagine doing that these days. But
No.
Did you ever meet MacArthur, General MacArthur?
No,
Did you know his wife at all?
No.
From Murfreesboro?
no.
Sometimes people have stories about them. But
Well, I've got one story about MacArthur. Like I told you, we covered the landing of the parachute drop in the Markham Valley, and we had, they dropped the paratroopers, and MacArthur was in a B-17 way up high with the door open, and him pictured, I think he had his picture in Life magazine standing in the door with a corncob pipe. It doesn't show that MacArthur's plane had about 30 P-38s covering him, with one squadron or one flight down there covering the paratroopers. Of course, it didn't run into anything, but he got all the coverage up there and got his picture in the paper. MacArthur wasn't thought too much of in the Pacific. He was called Dugout Doug, if you've ever heard that.
what did that signify?
Well, when the Japanese went into the Philippines, MacArthur got his family out on a plane to fly to Australia, and they left the others there at the mercy of the Japanese. Like Wainwright, I think it was, or something, and he got picked up and was prisoner of war and everything, but it almost seemed like they were deserted.
Did any of your buddies ever get captured?
Yes. In fact, in our squadron, there were three that we didn't know at the time, the three that were captured and beheaded. And Ken Dooley, who is an author writing a book, he's from somewhere down in Florida, has written a book about one. And let me get you a copy of the first chapter of that book. Unhooked it. Wow. I'm getting low in ink on that. That's another chapter in the book. You can keep those.
Oh, thank you.
Now I want the one back, that one I want it back.
Okay.
This is how I first got in touch with him. He put this in our squadron newsletter, and I called him. So he's been back and forth with me quite a bit.
Okay.
Now that right there will make your hair curl.
The testament of
Broken trust.
treatment of broken trust.
Yeah. They tortured him before they beheaded him, used him for target practice. And then they tried him after the war was over, and then damn if they didn't commute some of the sentence.
On campus?
Yeah,
on
they
campus?
were just beginning to have little Piper Cubs in CAA, I think. Let's see, number 3.
So it's ready for the takeoff.
I don't know who they were. Now, Thelma might be able to tell you. I don't recognize any of them.
So was the airstrip on campus?
No, they had a grass field
But they wouldn't land on
grass. Yeah.
there on campus?
Yeah,
Did that have any influence on you at all, becoming a
none
pilot?
whatsoever, because it wasn't going enough at the time for me to even be interested in it.
And is this picture next to it, is that what the dances usually look like?
Yep.
The streamers?
That's it. See, the orchestra was under that little canopy there.
And that's in the gym.
In the gym, yeah. Let's see.
Looks like that's in town, so down by the courthouse, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, Aaron, do you have any last wrap-up questions?
I forgot to ask you earlier, was your family from Tennessee originally?
Yeah.
Before?
Yeah, my dad grew up at Altamont, up on the mountain up here, and my mother was from Petros,
And you just had one sibling that was your twin sister?
twin sister. She died several years ago.
Do you have any children?
Nope,
Neither one of you?
nope.
So no other family that went to MTSU?
No.
You,
Any other questions? Did you get what you wanted?
I think so. We could always ask more, but I think that we
Okay,
covered
well,
the college and their
You have my
military.
phone number.
Okay.
Uh,
Thank you for taking
very
so much of your
okay.
time today.
Do you want my email address?
I have it.
Oh, you
'cause
have it?
You
Okay.
emailed. I remember the outcast part of it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Jim,